Hello, and welcome to another episode of Undiscovered Beasts and Strange Phenomena. Please join our experienced and knowledgeable panel of hosts as we explore the great mysteries of our time: Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and unexplained phenomena.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our show. Forgive me if I sound a bit croaky tonight. I think the coronavirus has got me. I'm in quarantine, but I'm okay. I'm fine. You know, I'm drinking plenty of fluids, and we're good. So tonight we welcome veteran researcher Dave Sidoti. He does a lot of work in Florida. I've been impressed by his research, and Mike and I both wanted him on the show. So welcome, Dave, and thanks for being on the show.
Oh, well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here, and hopefully one of the lucky ones that doesn't have the coronavirus just yet.
Well, I hope so too, Dave. Yeah, I can't say any more than that. Yeah, so we'll see how we go. Now, I wanted to talk to you first of all about your organisation, the Independent Sasquatch Research Team. How long has that been in existence, and what are its aims? Okay,
it's been in existence since 2000, so this year actually is our 20th anniversary, which hopefully we'll be celebrating at the end of this year because of multiple things going on, personal life, and now this coronavirus thing. So we pushed it all the way back to hopefully the end of December. So hopefully by then everything will be good to go, and we're going to have like a little gathering of our team members and just hopefully get some of the ones that have other states to come down and meet team members that they haven't met before. But yeah, it's been going on for 20 years. Since 2000.
I didn't know you had people in other states. What states do you have your members in?
There's a couple in Tennessee, one in New Hampshire, I believe, and there's a couple more that I think Michigan. There's one gentleman in Michigan, and some of the folks on the team are kind of like and enthusiasts. But we have, of course, down here in Florida, we have our core team of people that are constantly always going out into the field and as much as they can. Of course, we all have jobs and families to have, and we have to deal with those things as well. So, we do our best. But yeah, we have some out of state, and hopefully. That'll give everybody enough time to plan and maybe plan to come down to Florida and make a weekend of it. And hopefully we get
so what are you having? Are you having a celebration? What are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, it's a little gathering we're going to have, just the team members, and just to congratulate everybody that's been working hard and diligent and doing things in the background that other team members haven't seen, that, some of the research that they've done on their own in their areas that we may not hear about too often, and just to get together and kind of celebrate a 20-year thing. This thing's been going on for that long, and actually, a lot of people are pretty impressed that it's been going on that quite that long, and so am I.
Did you set it up?
Yeah, I started this in 2000. I was with a known big organization when I first started all this, and then I broke away from that, and for many differences. So. I started off on my own doing it, and that was getting kind of boring. So I wanted to get some other folks, hopefully, to join on with me, just to come out. And I hooked up with John. I think you met John. Me and John actually were the first ones that made up the whole team back in 2000. And so it went from me and him, and then it went to a little over 20 members now.
Good. So what aims do you have? You say you broke away from other groups. How would you say that your organisation is distinctive in some way?
Well, we don't backstab or backbite, so to speak, to complain about how others do things in the field, or just bicker back and forth. And I'm not one that's going to confiscate anybody's evidence and claim it's mine when it's not. Any evidence that any evidence that people on the team finds, their evidence, and they, by all rights, that's theirs because they work hard for it. I'll never claim it because it's not. I didn't do the work. So I think a lot of people are attracted by that, and a lot of researchers, because they've been dealt kind of badly with other groups and teams and what have you out there, that kind of the egos are kind of running strong with some of them, and there's absolutely no egos here, and it's laid back, and all I ask is everyone to work together as a team. If you can't do that, then this team absolutely doesn't need people like that. So you have to work as a team. You have to be good with that. You have to be a people person, and you have to get boots on the ground, basically. You want to get out there and do this research for a reason. And having that common goal is a good avenue for everybody to go with as far as getting scientific evidence and so forth. And, there's been a few members on our team that came from other groups, and they've been with us. Some of them have been with us from the start, and they're still here with us, and they're enjoying it. And some of the members I'm happy to call family because we've known each other quite a long time.
Quick question for you, Dave. I mean, when you say I want to talk to you about the methodology, the tracking, and things that you like doing, do you feel that your group has made any insights or discoveries in any way that you would like to share with people? Is there something significant that you think you've done?
Significantly, I see. We just work together really well. Everyone's on the same page, and we're all for meeting those goals. That common goal is to collect the evidence scientifically, to work as a team, to get out in the field, collaborate with one another, and talk amongst ourselves about how we do things, different tactics we do out in the field. And a lot of these tactics that are, a lot of these shows are coming up with now, we've been doing it for years. We just, don't advertise it. But I think that's kind of distinctive in how we do things. A lot of times people never heard about us down here in Florida. That's because we fly under the radar. And that's a good thing because, what's that? Why?
Why do you fly under the radar? Because you mention that a lot when you speak to me. I'm interested in why you do that.
Well, because we get a lot more done doing it that way. It kind of weeds out the riffraff that kind of want to grab onto the sort of, the skirt tails of what we do. And, kind of weeds out a lot of people like that aren't true to the research. And our team is all about being true to the research. We're not here to, make money, make ourselves famous. We're here for getting answers and getting evidence.
When you talk about getting answers and getting evidence, how would you approach field work, methodology that you use? Are there any insights you could share with people that you think are good practice?
Well, good practice is following how scientists collect their evidence in the field and doing those things the right way, or as close as we can to collect that evidence, because for any science organization to look at any evidence, the first question they're going to ask is, well, how did you collect the evidence? Because they want to know, because if you didn't collect it the correct way, they don't want to waste any time looking at it. So we do our best to get knowledge on that. We've had a number of classes. One in particular was a tracking class that we had back in 2010. A number of our team members actually had a class in here in the Green Swamp with I think it was Lee Culver and his group from Georgia.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting class. It's really interesting trying to track at night. That was very challenging, or thought it was really challenging. Actually, it was easier to track at night than it was during the day.
Why was that? Why?
Because you can control the light. You're using flashlights, and during the day, it's much harder, especially the time of day. Tracking early in the morning or late in the afternoon is the best times to track. You don't want to try to track an animal, say from 10 to 2 in those hours, because the sun is right on top of you. And at nighttime, you can control the light with a flashlight, so you can see tracks much clearer, and trackways going through different parts of the terrain. So that was very interesting. And then we also had a class on forensics by a gentleman by the name of Tim Whitfield. A very excellent class that we had. It gave us a really good insight on how to collect DNA evidence and what the best DNA evidence to collect was. And so we had a really good class. He taught us a lot of things I didn't know, and how to collect DNA evidence, and how to go about that, and who to contact to get the evidence examined right here in the state of Florida. But from what I understand is there's a lot of different avenues for DNA, but his standpoint was that the best DNA was saliva, because he's trained in that field with authorities. He was a police officer for 47 or 46 years, retired, and he said that's what puts criminals behind bars is saliva swab, DNA testing that way. So if we can actually get a Sasquatch licking anything off of anything, you want to grab that whatever item possibly that you saw him licking or eating or chewing on something. You want to collect that evidence, and then you want to stick that into a freezer until you can get it tested, because those cells can freeze, but they'll still be good for testing.
Yeah. It's interesting, really. I mean, just as a side, when I was in Marshall looking for the orangutan deck, we got some rattan which one had been chewing. Just as an eyewitness saw it, it dropped the rattan and it ran away. And I tried to get Todd Dissertel to test that. This is about 10 years ago, and we just weren't able to get we just couldn't extract the DNA off the rattan. Then we just couldn't do it. It wasn't quite sophisticated enough. Now we'd be able to. But which is frustrating, but also really encouraging. But just one small thing: not all saliva has DNA. For example, mine, I don't have very much DNA in my saliva.
Right.
So it's not completely. None of these methodologies are foolproof, but I'm sure you know
exactly.
that. Yeah.
But also he was mentioning too, like a good place, a good DNA collection would be if you were to see any of these trees that were broken over, twisted, or any kind of tree structure that was woven. You could possibly take that, cut that off, and do the same thing, freeze it, because like humans, and if these things are like any person or human or ape or that would have hands, they have a cell system, and those cells, when you grab something from a tree, you twist and break it, you're leaving cells, dead cells, skin cells on that tree limb or what have you, or handprints on glass. So you have you have those cells in that are leaving your body. They're shedding those cells constantly. So any handprint, anything that was broken over and twisted, you want to possibly grab. Especially if you see this thing doing it, then you definitely want to run over there and grab that and do the same thing. You want to freeze that evidence because it freezes those cells in place. So when it's time to get tested, you can thaw that out and they can test and do DNA testing on that as well. Because even the bottom of their feet, if you see tracks, they say you can possibly get cells, DNA cells off footprint tracks as well.
Mm. Yeah, so you're investigating a lot. You're employing experts in their own methodology to educate.
Well, yeah, we don't want to. Yeah, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. I mean, there's already scientific ways of doing things, so you might as well, incorporate that in your field work.
Good. Now, one of the things I noticed with your group is you have quite a few ladies, which is very encouraging. Do you promote the idea of women in the field and have more women in the field? Because you've got a lot in your group, really, as a proportion.
Yeah. Yeah, we encourage anybody. I mean, we don't care who it is. To me, as long as you're wanting to get in, get dirty, get in the field, get dirty, get evidence, and enjoy it, and you get along with everybody on the team, and you're here, you want to do it for the right reasons. We welcome anybody. It doesn't matter, male, female, or whoever. So, we have quite a few females on our team. All of them are exceptional. They all have many skills. And I think everybody has a lot of different skills that they bring to the table, which is encouraging because, more heads together, put their heads together, we come up with some pretty good ideas and just use them in the field. I mean, the more people that have good ideas, this is what we like, and we like to joke around a lot and have a good time in the field, as you know. I do know. So let's have a look at. Let's talk a little bit about Florida specifically. What are your hotspots in Florida, Dave, and why are they your hotspots? Well, I won't say they're my hotspots. I have a few areas that I frequent. There's one down in of course in South Florida. There's a lot of places down there. Bill lives down there, and and another gentleman that is down there with him that helps out with him in the field. And I think it was Dave Miller. Him actually had an encounter down there, and that's a pretty good spot. Didn't know it was a hot spot or not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But they actually got one on. Actually saw one. Let me put it correctly. They saw one on therm, and they saw one with a night vision all in the same time. But by the time they were trying to fix on the subject and to record it, the thing took off. I mean, super fast. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get a good video of that, but Bill was able to see this thing peeking around the tree, and he can see it really good with the night vision. He got a very clear detail of the creature, and it was just kind of peeking out behind the tree, checking them out, seeing what they were doing there at midnight down in South Florida near Lake Okeechobee. So that was a really good area there, and they continue to research that area. And there's, of course, the Green Swamp of Florida is a mecca of sighting reports.
Do we know how big Green Swamp is, Dave? Just so people can get an idea of the scale of this place.
Yeah, it's over 5,000 square feet of water management land. I know that, but it goes much beyond that. With the surrounding areas around there. Some are private areas. So the Green Swamp as a whole is very large. It's over maybe I had a number here somewhere.
Yeah, it's all right. Just roughly, just so people get areas. You don't need to be precise.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Withlacoochee River runs through there, and that river itself is over 100 miles long, and it goes through quite a few areas through counties there. So they're traveling up and down that Withlacoochee River, and going and connecting down through some other rivers south of there and north of there, possibly all the way through Ocala National Forest. But it's a very big area.
Good. Now, a couple of things. You've got a print from there, which I want you to talk about, and also have there been any eyewitness reports or investigations in that area, in the Green Swamp we're talking about specifically?
Yeah, I pulled out a print in 2015. It was a little infant print. You can see that on our website. A lot of information on our website from field evidence there. We pulled out. I pulled out an infant track, and it was basically measuring. I got the ball, the toe, and the ball of the foot. So it's literally a little over 3 inches by 3 inches. Like this thing is running on its ball and toe through the woods. It only got one print, unfortunately. There were some hunters in the area, and actually the hunter brought it to our attention. Me and Chuck were out scouting the area, and what I like to do when I do that during hunting season, because we don't like to get out there in the field during the day in those areas where there's hunters, but we can at night. So what I would do, I would leave a card or a flyer in their camp somewhere, so where somebody would see it, maybe on a camp chair or something like that, and just leave a card or a flyer stating, "Hey, this is what we do." And if you ever come across anything like this or see any evidence like this, please contact me. I have the contact number on there. And it just so happens that there was a gentleman walking into the camp, and so I approached him and told him what we were doing there, and he said to us that, well, there's a couple guys down there said they saw or found a print down there, and one guy said he thinks it was a skunk ape print. So me and Chuck walked down there and had all my gear and stuff, and we met up with him, and sure enough, this gentleman showed us exactly where the print was, and unfortunately they were driving trucks through there all day, and at the end of the day he just noticed that this one was right in the middle of the rut of the two-rut road, right up on the center part of it, and it was in some pretty good mud, and as I was looking at it and he was looking at it, he goes, the only thing I can tell you what that is, he goes, that's a skunk ape print. So I kind of looked at him. I said, well, how do you know about skunk apes? He goes, well, I saw one up in the panhandle of Florida when I was 12 years old hunting. And he said, I've seen bigger prints up there. And he goes, this one here is a little one. And he goes, they look exactly the same, but this one's smaller. And so he told me his story about that as I was casting this little print. And that was in 2015. And so these hunters, some of them will come up and tell you about some of their experiences they had. Some won't, of course, but I like to be open and honest with people and let them know, hey, we're just here to get evidence and get your story and and find out these locations of where you're seeing these creatures at, so we can go and investigate. So
now, one of the things that I seem to have noticed recently that interests me is there's been quite a few interesting reports coming out of Florida, which some of them have been quite credible, and that's certainly been interesting me, and one of the reasons I'd like to go down there a lot. Are there any that strike you in your investigations that you thought have been particularly compelling in the areas you're talking about?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
There's been quite a few reports recently coming out of Florida, more recently than I think in almost any other area. So my question is, are there any reports that you've heard of recently or investigated yourself personally that you found compelling?
Well, in 2015, I think it was 2015, 2016, I think it was. Compelling was a gentleman by the name of Steve. He had an encounter that I heard about on another podcast show. And I contacted that gentleman from the podcast show and said, if you could, please give that gentleman my information. I'd like to speak with him. And he did. And I got a call from Steve here from Florida. And we talked for probably a little over an hour about his encounter. He was still shook up about the whole thing. And this was just like several weeks or a month after it happened. And what was compelling about that this gentleman, he had no inkling of getting into Bigfoot, knowing what Bigfoot was. He heard of Bigfoot before, of course, from mainstream media. But it was never anything that he would think about. He was out there fishing. He was checking out an area for fishing for redfish for a tournament that was coming up, and that he was going to be in. And he was just checking out the area, and it was early in the morning. It was right before the sun was coming up, and he first got hit with a smell, and then he got hit with a vocal, which kind of, a typical vocal that goes right through you, and right through your bones.
What was the smell, Dave? What was the smell? Do you remember?
How they described it to me, he said it was like a god-awful smell that he said was almost wanting to puke. And as he was fishing, he got hit with that, and then he just couldn't take the smell anymore, so he was going to leave. And he took a couple strokes. He was on his kayak that he was sitting on. He had a sit-on-top kayak. And then he heard this sound, this big roar scream sound that went through him. And then he saw pigs running down the embankment of the bank there where he was fishing, which he said he was probably about 15 to 20 feet from. So he's watching these pigs, and he thought maybe he scared him up or something. Whatever that sound was scared him. And as he was watching these pigs run, the little hogs, we got these hogs down here just infiltrated in Florida. So he's watching these hogs, and all of a sudden, behind this palm frond, he sees his hand get pulled down. And now he's looking at this face is looking at him. So he's like looking at this face is looking at him. And he's trying to figure out what the heck is that. And he said, Dave, just like lightning, this thing he didn't know if it was squatting or if it was, kneeling down or whatever. He said this thing came at him like lightning. And it charged him into the water. And he got so scared that he flipped backwards in his kayak, and now he's in the water, coming up out of the water, and he's yelling at this thing, screaming at this thing, trying to make it go away. And now this thing's 12 feet in front of him, and it's pissed at him. And the interesting thing is that he, even though this thing came off the shore into the water, which is, I believe, he said he can tell that up from the knees or the thighs, he saw from that part up, but he was more focused on this thing's facial expression, because any wild animal, you want to know exactly what its next move is going to be. So he was fixated on his face and his shoulders and his upper torso, and apparently he pissed this thing off, maybe messed up a hunt that this thing was having. So he said the look on his face had a look like, I just want to kill you. and then it just kind of slowly turned and walked back up on the bank and back into the wood line. And I find that one very compelling because it was a pretty aggressive encounter, which I have not heard of in Florida. I mean, up until a few months ago, I heard a even worse one, but that one happened way back in the 70s. Where actually the confrontation of that encounter, unfortunately, the gentleman died later on.
Well, let's come on to that in a minute. I just want to focus a little bit because that's a very powerful story, and that was the second one I wanted to come on to, if you don't mind. So I joined you on part of that investigation with Steve, and
yes.
When we went there, I was speaking to him privately, and one thing that struck me, like you said, was how traumatized he was by that. His hand was shaking as he was talking to me, just involuntarily. He had his hand down by his side, but he was actually, I'm doing the movement now, but it was actually vibrating as he was talking. He was so disturbed by it. He wouldn't come with us, would he, when we did the investigation? He was just too nervous about it.
Yeah, he was very nervous. He was actually wanting to go with us, but he just said he goes, I can't, Dave. He goes, you guys are all happy, ready to go out there. He goes, I'm thinking you guys are crazy. He's like, if you saw what I saw, you would not go out there. And the place is very interesting, though. Unfortunately, you didn't get boots on the ground as me and Willie did. We got out there after a hurricane, unfortunately, went through there. So we were actually 2 months after his sighting that we went out there. And, of course, the hurricane Matthew, I think it was, that came through up the East Coast, it just ripped everything to shreds up there. So trying to find some good evidence of anything was null and void. But just walking through there, it was very thick. I mean, very thick. I mean, there could have been rattlesnakes as big as your thigh out there, but unfortunately we didn't see those. So, but we were prepared, for hiking in those types of conditions. But it was very thick, and you can basically see how many, not just one, but maybe many of these creatures, or a family of them, could be living in that area.
Well, one of the things that struck me is that when I went through there was obviously plenty of food, shellfish, rays, all of those sort of things, and it could easily I mean, I'm speculating, of course, but you could easily have transient populations just moving around foraging quite in the same way. If I contrast it with, say, with Vancouver Island, when there's shellfish season up there, you see a lot of activity on the edge of the waterways, the inlets, the saltwater inlets. Same thing in Florida, obviously a different habitat, but it's no different to when Native American tribes or peoples all across the world, you forage for seasonal food, and it could well have been doing that. We don't know. But one of the things I found interesting, and I say no more than this, is that I remember hearing, late at night when we were there one of the nights, a very strange call, and I'll put in no more than that. But I did hear a strange call, and that intrigued me. Did you hear that, Dave, or do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was it the night we were on the island, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting, and it was coming from the direction of what was private land, actually. Let's just say it meant that, because I don't want to give the location up, because it's very, very close to some private land there. But it was coming from that location. It was a very interesting call or yell, but it's very distant and back there. But from what Steve was saying, that he's been fishing in that area for over 20 years, but he doesn't go down there no more. He goes, I just can't. He goes, I got to find some other fishing areas now, because it plays in the back of his mind that unfortunately any area that's wooded, that comes to the forefront automatically, and that's part of the PTSD of that people have with encounters, is that you may try to push it in the back of your mind, but something's going to trigger and say, no, I'm not going here. this doesn't feel right. And unfortunately, it happens to many people that have aggressive encounters like that. But yeah, that sound was very interesting. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to the location of Steve's encounter that trip. No. So we had to book it back to the Green Swamp, where you wanted to go check out where I found that print. And we set up cameras. We set up cameras that night, and I think I remember telling you that I got a vocalization, which you can hear on our website. And I put it up on our website. Yeah,
that was quite interesting, because that sounds a lot. I mean, mention the name of the website now, Dave, so that people can listen.
Oh, okay.
To that.
Yeah. Our website is the ISRTUSA.com. It's short for Independent Sasquatch Research Team, and of course, we're in the USA. So ISRTUSA.com.
Now, tell us the story behind the story behind the vocalization, if you will, just briefly, if you will.
The vocalization, as me and you were putting cameras up, and I was showing the location where I found the print, and JC was with us that time as well. I left a little audio recorder out there, and it's a little kind of like a mini parabolic that I made, and it's made out of a funnel, oil funnel, and I use Olympus recorder in there, and I have a piece of rope that I feed through there, and the recorder gets sucked up into the very narrow part of it. That way, if in case it rains, which it did that night, the recorder would be fine and not get wet or damaged. I just propped that up in the tree while we were putting cameras up. And it was at the 20-minute mark, actually, after we set that last camera up and when we went back to camp, is where I got that vocalization. And it sounded like, of course, you can hear a truck in the background because a lot of guys with the trucks out here going mudding, they call it, tearing up the roads. You hear a truck first, and then all of a sudden you hear this thing go, and that was it. I listened to 3 or 2.5 days worth of audio, and we had the monsoon, and you could hear things walking around the audio, the recorder, but it was not very distinctive of what it could be. It could be a deer. But when we retrieved the cameras and the audio equipment, you guys did not find any bear tracks or any sign of bear before or after we set the camera. So if it was a bear, and after doing research in Ocala for many years, bears are just like any other creature. They find a path of least resistance, they're going to walk down it. And, of course, that road was a path of least resistance, and we didn't see any sign of bear walking down there or anything on the camera either. So the audio...
It made me sit up. I remember listening to you sent it. I was in bed. I listened to it at the time, and I actually went, whoa, actually, that's impressive. I was quite... I advise listeners to have a listen to that yourselves and draw your own conclusions, but I was pretty impressed by that. Now, obviously I was there and I helped out, but what people will understand is that Dave is obviously very diligent in his methodology. He's listening to hours and hours of things, and then, he finds the one thing, which is what good research is all about. It's not about wandering around and being all glamorous. Then you have to... Painstaking is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Spit out.
Yep. You have to be diligent because I know it sounds like a joke, but you got to kind of think like a Sasquatch, You don't want to be seen. You don't want to be around humans. So, where are these things going to be at? And, they have to come out to get water. They have to come out and forage for food. So those are the places that you want to go to. You want to research those areas, and they're in thick areas. Now, if you're looking for some kind of bedding or something like that, or some kind of nesting things, which are pretty hard to find. Some of these things we find around here, you kind of scratch your head at because you have survivalists that come into the field or the woods, and they practice their skills. So you have to kind of weed out, was there a survival class in this area? And were they practicing their survival skills, off grid? So you have to kind of weed that kind of stuff off. You just can't jump in and say, oh, look, this possibly could have been a Sasquatch.
Must be a Bigfoot. It's rubbish.
Yeah, it must be a Bigfoot. You got to disprove it. That it isn't, you got to disprove that it isn't anything human before you can start going down the path that it could be a Sasquatch.
Yeah, totally. No, I completely 100% agree with you. Now, you mentioned the story about the 70s, which is a really fascinating story. Do you mind telling us that, Dave? That's a good story.
Well, that was told actually from a friend of mine that's up in Ocala. And his name's Charlie, and he has a Facebook page. It's called the Bigfoot Guys. And me and him are actually been trying to get together to work together. We collaborate with each other about things that's going on up there. He's been getting a ton of reports around the Ocala, Florida area. He's been working with the authorities. He's been working with the fish and game people up there, investigating along with him up there in areas of encounters. He has a particular lady that he wants me to meet, and because she's been having stuff going on since 2006, and it continues today. And it's very interesting, and maybe I'll get into that next time. After I meet up with her and him. But the story was told, this happened back in the 70s, and it's kind of a long story, but and the details you can find out on his Facebook page, which is, if anyone wants to go there, he actually, word for word, from the gentleman's mouth, he wrote this down, and he said not to waver from it. And of course, he got a few choice words all through the thing. But basically, we'll run you down through it a little bit here. What happened in the 70s is that when he was a little boy, it was him and his sister, and they were little. I think he said they were like maybe 6 or 7. And it was his birthday, and his parents asked him, what do you want to do for your birthday? And he said, well, I like to go camping. There's a favorite spot they like to go camping at all the time, and he just like going out in the outdoors and going camping with us, and having a good time out there. So they got the family together and went out in Ocala, and this particular area in Ocala, and they were camping. And it got, of course, late at night. They were done cooking their food, and they were all going to bed. And they got woke up in the middle of the night with the screams of their mother screaming. They were obviously in the other tent. The mom and father, and the two, him and his sister were in another tent, not too far from mom and dad. And so they hear the screams. They wake up, and the daughter is the first one out of the tent, and she's running towards Mama, and the mother is screaming, and of course the little girl doesn't know what Mom's screaming at, but as she's running towards her mom, this thing grabs her by the arm and just slings her clear across the campsite. And by that time, the father is getting out of the tent, and he sees what his wife is screaming at. And he says it's hard to judge as a little kid how tall this thing was, but he said his dad was 6 foot something, maybe 6'4". I could be wrong on that, but he was a pretty tall gentleman. And he said this thing was clearly 2 foot or more taller than him, and huge, and wide. And he says he remembers it covered in hair. It looked like a big giant man. And he said them two went at it. the father jumped on this thing, and they went going at it, fisticuffs. They were just fighting back and forth, and he was watching this, and the little girl was, of course, the mom ran over to the little girl and grabbed her. As she was getting around where they were fighting at, the mom grabbed him, and they jumped into the car. And of course, back in the 70s, the cars were like tanks back then, right?
Yeah.
And they're not like they are today. And I think it was a Dodge. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was a Dodge. Let's just say a Dodge. Some kind of Dodge car. It was like a big, huge Dodge car. And his wife's they're in the car screaming, and they're watching their father getting pummeled by this creature, right? And you can hear like bones, stuff breaking, and they could see that, Dad's not doing too well fighting this thing. So the mother, the only thing she knew what to do is crank the car up. So she cranked the car up and she rammed this thing, and it let out a god-awful scream, and this thing tore off into the woods. And he goes, I don't know how my mom did it. He goes, but, she was a little old thing, but she got their dad into the car, and they took off and drove to the hospital immediately. And they got to the hospital, and they were trying to explain to the doctors what happened. Apparently he was bleeding internally, and he didn't make it. And unfortunately, he passed away in the hospital. So they explained what was going on, and of course they gave him a look like, oh, these people maybe they're crazy. They're not telling us the truth. So of course the authorities gets involved, and then before you know it, the whole hospital is shut down. And then of course these other people come in all dressed up, and of course what those type of people are. They shut the whole hospital down, and they actually got flown out of there. They flew them out of the state of Florida to Washington. They were up there for a pretty good while getting interviewed, and basically being told that what happened was a bear attacked their dad. And they constantly told them, no, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a bear. And I think after several days of being confronted with them about, no, what you're going to tell everybody is what it was a bear. And knowing damn well right, there wasn't a bear. They know a difference between bears. If you live in Ocala, you know what a bear looks like. So anyhow, they agreed to say it was a bear. And I'm cutting this story in half. It's pretty long and lengthy.
Yeah.
There's some other details involved, but basically they after several weeks they flew them back home, and when they got back home, they had a brand new car. Their old car was gone. When they walked in the house, there was nothing in the house related to their father at all. They had basically took everything out, gave the kids new toys, all these toys and all this stuff, and gave the mother this and all these new things. And basically told them to keep their mouth shut and don't ever talk about it. And that haunted that man for a long time, or all his life, actually. And unfortunately, the daughter, his sister, took her life at 19 because she couldn't handle it. And the guy was so distraught. I mean, he lost family members over it, and he lost jobs over it. Couldn't get a job to save his life. So he did odd jobs and stuff like that. But I think it was that one of his nieces, I think it was, or his granddaughter. I think his granddaughter. That's what it was. She was the only one that actually had anything to do with him over the years. he was in bad shape here, I think last year that he passed away. So he heard what Charlie was doing in Ocala and got a hold of Charlie. And he actually sat him down and they had an interview with this whole story about what happened. And he said he didn't care what happened to him. He said that he was on his way out and he was going to tell a story. He said, but he said you tell the story, but you tell it word for word. And that's what he did. Charlie did that. So that was a very compelling one, and that's it's very disheartening, to say the least, about how things can transpire on some encounters. But actually, Charlie actually. I'm sorry. What's that?
I just want to. There's a point I want to make. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sure.
There's a point I want to make, which is with this story. It'll be useful checking out the veracity of it. But it builds on from what happened, and the reason I wanted to talk about Steve's story first, and then go on to this story, and then I want to come back to Steve's because I don't know how much you can say about this, and if you can't say any more, then that's fine. But my understanding is that there was a friend of Steve's who had a certain role who also saw something in the same spot, an official. Yeah. Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, all I can really say it was second hand, but in that area, yeah, they actually closed down a part of Ocala for us, which was odd, and it was the first time I ever heard of that because of bear activity. Apparently, I think they said it was a hunter, or I think which was absurd because in the area that this happened at, there was no hunting allowed in that area. And but anyhow, this gentleman got attacked by something that they call a bear. But there was a couple of photos that were floated around and that had pictures of this guy, and nowhere on his where he got grabbed at, which is his shoulder, I think it was. Nowhere on his shoulder that had any bear or claw marks. You know, these things look like one distinctive finger mark. Looked like, and the rest of them just looked black and blue. And Steve found that information out from an authority person that he knew in the area. And Steve went up there just to go check it out because he said the place was crawling with individuals that were trying to, quote unquote, get rid of the bear issue. And what it was is that poor Steve, he got up there and he was shaking like a leaf, probably because he was hearing some stuff in the woods. And what he found odd was that a bunch of deer come out of the woods and some of them ran up underneath his truck and were hiding. And while that was happening, he can hear footfalls in the wood line, like it was coming closer and closer. And at that point, he was, of course, questioning himself why he was there. He shouldn't have been there because all these thoughts of this creature coming back to in the forefront of his brain again about this thing attacking him. So he was nonetheless pretty scared at that point. But it wasn't until he heard automatic weapon fire that he just said, "Screw it, I'm out of here," and hauled butt and went back home. And so apparently there's some issues going on up there, and we went up there to investigate. A few of our team members actually actually questioned a camp host up there at a camp spot that we were going to camp at. And I said, I heard there's some records up here not too long ago about some bear activity. And the guy said, oh, yeah. He says, some hikers were out there and they were feeding these bears and they shouldn't have been feeding these bears and blah, 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 and they got attacked. Okay, so I think if anybody's anybody, even if you don't go out in the woods, the number one rule is you don't feed bears and you don't get close enough to feed a bear. So, just putting two and two together, this gentleman was told, just like everybody else was told around there, that it was a bear attack. And this is what happened. So it was a fabricated story that they spread throughout the forest, that it was a bear attack. And I actually got confirmation from Charlie that the certain people that he's working with, I guess, he actually confirmed that that wasn't a bear attack. So up in Ocala, there's a lot of stuff going on up there. A lot of encounters, a lot of people reporting these. And the interesting thing is that there's a bombing range up there. And Charlie and I were talking about this bombing range, and I've known it's been up there for years. And the military will go there and they'll drop bombs. They'll drop live bombs. They'll drop dummy bombs. And they won't announce it usually. They'll just one day, okay, we're going to drop bombs, and we'll be practicing. Well, Charlie actually did some research on the prior times that all these bomb droppings were happening there. And he goes, every time they do that, there's been encounters a week or two afterwards. And he goes, Dave, do you think those things are hiding in that bombing range area because they know it's restricted area and they know humans can't get into those areas? And I told him, well, it's possible, If you don't want to deal with campers or hikers all around Ocala, where else would you go? Into a restricted area where none other than they can get into, of course. But then when the bombing starts, guess what? They disperse out throughout the forest, and they get out of that area because they don't want to get hit with bombs.
No, of course not.
It makes perfectly good sense, and so apparently there's a lot of reports right after a bombing activity goes on throughout Ocala, and it doesn't matter what area, if it's north, south, east, or west.
Very cool. Now, we're almost out of time now, Dave. Is there what's next on the horizon for you, and how could people get in touch with you?
What's next? Well, we're always trying to get out in these areas that we find good evidence. So we're going to probably just hit those areas. I would like to get out to the Panhandle sometime, check those areas out, because there's some really good areas up there that I've been hearing about reports coming out of. And maybe South Florida, areas in the Everglades, in that area. But we always have try to come up with some good areas to go into. So I'm hoping that will transpire. We'll see how it goes after all this coronavirus stuff ends. Because they have all the pretty much all the public areas are closed. You can't get into a lot of them now.
No, it's all closed down.
Yeah,
but if they want to get in touch with you, would people go on your website? What's the best way to get in touch with you, Dave, if they have sightings?
You can get through our website, through Facebook, which is ISRT USA Florida, or our website, of course. You can go to our website. You can contact us there by email, isrtusa@gmail.com. There's a hotline there you can call if you have an encounter in the Florida or wherever, because we work with anybody, basically. If they're on the up and up, we're glad to work with any other people, teams, or individuals. We're happy to take anybody's reports or investigate any areas that they're having these creatures in their areas, that we can come out and check out and do a due diligence and collecting some evidence. So those are the two areas that you can contact us at. There's our website and on Facebook.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Dave. We're out of time now, but I want to thank you, Dave, for being on the show. We really appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you very much.
No, it's our pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, that was David Sidoti, excellent researcher, diligent, methodical, and balanced, and doing a lot of great field work in Florida. Mike and I will be back next week, and I think we'll be talking UFOs. So see you, ladies and gentlemen, same time next week. Thank you very much. Good night.